Welcome to this explainer. Did you know the Indian Constitution is actually the longest written national constitution in the entire world? Today, we're going to look at this ultimate architectural blueprint of a nation, and I want you to think of it not just as some dry, dusty legal document, but as the literal foundational floor plan for the world's largest democracy. It dictates exactly how the entire structure of the nation is built, how the power is distributed, and really, how millions of citizens live together inside it.
So to understand this massive structure, here's our floor plan for today. We'll start with the Constitution's blueprint, move on to fundamental rights and duties, check out the directive principles of state, go inside the Indian Parliament, look at the President of India, and wrap up with the new Parliament building.
All right, let's dive right into Section 1, the Constitution's blueprint, laying the foundation. Now, every grand structure needs a solid foundation, right? And ours begins with the Preamble. You can kind of think of this as the ID card of the Constitution. It doesn't give you the specific day-to-day laws, but it tells you the exact philosophy the entire country is built upon. It openly declares India to be a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. And just as a quick historical note, the 42nd Amendment in 1976 formally added those specific words, socialist and secular, to this foundational text. It really sets the core identity of the state before a single law is even drafted. Now, what I find absolutely fascinating here is how our Constitution's architects basically gathered the best building materials from all around the world to assemble this framework. I mean, look at this. The blueprint borrows the parliamentary system from the UK, the concept of fundamental rights from the United States, and the directive principles from Ireland. But here's the crucial point. They weren't just blindly copying. No way. They were masterfully tailoring the best global ideas to fit India's totally unique socio-economic terrain, creating this brilliant synthesis of democratic practices. And that tailoring? That's exactly what gives us this incredible structural balance. Article 1 actually declares India a union of states. Think of this setup sort of like a large family. Most of the time, it operates as a federal system. The states, like siblings, have their own rooms, their own local governments, and they make their own day-to-day rules. But it also has unitary features, like a single citizenship and a really strong central government. So, during a national crisis or emergency, the central government, acting a bit like a parent, steps in to keep the whole house safe and unified. It's federal in form, for sure, but designed to act unitary in spirit when the nation needs it most.
Moving right along to Section 2, Fundamental Rights and Duties. These are the load-bearing pillars.
Okay, so moving up from the foundation, we find the pillars that are actually holding the structure up and protecting the citizens inside. Derived from Part 3 of the Constitution, these 6 fundamental rights basically act as the Magna Carta of India. And why does this matter to you? Well, because these aren't just polite suggestions, they are your personal shield against arbitrary state action. Whether it's your right to speak your mind freely, your right to practice your religion, or your right to equality before the law, these are quite literally the load-bearing pillars of your daily freedom. But you know, a shield is totally useless if you can't actually wield it. And that brings us to Article 32. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar actually called this the soul and heart of the Constitution. It's essentially the ultimate customer service desk for when your rights are denied. It grants the Supreme Court the power to issue direct, highly specific orders called writs. For example, habeas corpus essentially means produce the body, meaning the state cannot just lock you up without a valid, legally justified reason. Mandamus means we command, literally forcing a public official or government body to do their job. It's instant, real-time accountability. So the Constitution gives us this incredible shield. We have our rights, which is fantastic. But it kind of begs a very interesting question. What do we, as citizens, owe in return to keep this massive building from falling apart? Because a building needs constant maintenance from its residents, right? Well, that maintenance comes in the form of fundamental duties. The Constitution outlines exactly 11 of these under Article 51A. Now, initially recommended by the Swaran Singh Committee, 10 of these duties were added during the 42nd Amendment in 1976. And then an 11th, regarding education for children, was added by the 86th Amendment back in 2002. These 11 duties include things like protecting the natural environment, safeguarding public property, and respecting the national flag. You can really think of it as the civic rent we pay for living safely and freely in this democratic structure. All right, let's look at Section 3, Directive Principles of State, Landscaping the Future. If the rights and duties are the physical pillars, the directive principles are essentially the landscaping and expansion plans for the state's future. Borrowed from Ireland, these principles, which you'll find in Articles 36 to 51, are categorized into socialist,
Gandhian, and liberal intellectual goals. Now, unlike your fundamental rights, these aren't legally enforceable in a court of law. Why? Well, think about it. In 1950, a newly independent India simply didn't have the financial resources to guarantee things like free legal aid, living wages, or equal pay for everyone right off the bat. So these were planted as seeds, or moral guidelines, for future governments to strive toward as the country grew wealthier.
Next up is Section 4, Inside the Indian Parliament, the operational engine. Let's actually step inside the operational engine room where the laws of the land are made, the Parliament. It uses a bicameral design. And bicameral simply means a two-room system. On one side, we have the directly elected Lok Sabha, or the House of the People, operating on a 5-year term. On the other side is the permanently continuing, indirectly elected Rajya Sabha, the Council of States. This two-room system is really brilliant. The Lok Sabha represents the sheer population of the country, while the Rajya Sabha ensures the individual states don't get totally drowned out by the bigger, more populated cities. Let's talk numbers, because these punch in the maximum structural capacity of both houses. The Constitution allows for up to 550 members in the Lok Sabha, representing constituencies directly across the country, and up to 250 members in the Rajya Sabha, representing the states and union territories. Now do me a favor and keep these maximum capacity numbers, 550 and 250, in the back of your mind, because they're going to become very important when we look at the physical architecture of the nation in just a bit.
Section 5. The President of India, the head of the edifice.
So, right at the very top of our architectural blueprint sits the highest executive office. But surprisingly, the president isn't elected directly by the public. Instead, it's a highly specific, mathematically balanced, indirect process. First, an electoral college is formed, consisting of elected members of parliament and state legislators. Then, the value of their votes is mathematically weighted based on state population. Finally, they use a proportional single transferable vote system. In simple terms, instead of just picking one single favorite candidate, voters rank them: first choice, second choice, third choice. If your first choice gets eliminated, your vote just transfers to your second choice. It's a neat system that ensures the final winner truly has the broad backing of the majority. To hold this prestigious office, one must be a citizen of India and at least 35 years old. They serve a maximum 5-year term and are subject to impeachment for violation of the Constitution under Article 61. Now, as the ultimate formal head, they hold vast executive powers. But operationally, how does that actually work? Well, think of the president as the ceremonial owner of the building, while the prime minister and their cabinet are the property managers, making the daily, on-the-ground operational decisions. The president is ultimately bound to act on the advice of that cabinet.
And finally, Section 6, the new Parliament building, physical architecture for the future.
Let's look at how this conceptual constitutional blueprint has literally been built into physical stone with the recent Central Vista project. Built at an estimated cost of 862 crore rupees, this massive project spanning 64,500 square meters was designed by architect Bimal Patel and constructed by Tata Projects. But you might be wondering, why was it even built? Well, the old building was approaching a century in age, and it was fundamentally struggling to support modern IT, contemporary security needs, and just the sheer growing space required for a 21st century democracy's engine. This new triangular marvel is explicitly designed to meet all those modern demands.
And hey, this is where those numbers we talked about earlier come into play. Notice the massive upgrade in capacity here. The new Lok Sabha chamber, which is themed around the national bird, the peacock, can hold 888 seats. The Rajya Sabha chamber, featuring a beautiful lotus theme, holds 384 seats. Because as India's population continues to grow, constituencies will eventually be redrawn, requiring more representatives to maintain that democratic balance. This new space is entirely future-proofed for that exact reality, with the Lok Sabha Hall even capable of expanding to host joint sessions of up to 1,272 members. That is a lot of space. And just as the Constitution borrowed ideas from around the world, the building itself visually represents the entire nation by borrowing physical materials from across the country. Check out the elements bringing this to life. It incorporates rich teak wood from Nagpur and stunning sandstone from Rajasthan. But most notably, it features the historic Singhol. This is a traditional Chola dynasty scepter, symbolizing the righteous and just transfer of power, and it has been proudly installed right next to the speaker's chair. A real piece of history brought into the modern era. Which brings us to our final lingering thought. How will this new physical structure shape the future of the foundational constitutional blueprint we just explored together? Will this expansive new space change the culture of political debate? How will a foundational blueprint drafted way back in 1950 continue to adapt to the digital age within these modern walls? It is absolutely fascinating to consider how the world's largest democracy will evolve next. Thank you so much for exploring this with me on this explainer. Keep your curiosity alive, and I will catch you next time.